Okay, so I'm going to go over how to add floors in Revit. Now I'm working off of the same file. So let me go that has this kind of cutout situation, okay, which is what we were working on in the previous walls um, tutorial. I just added these walls over here. And that's where we're at. Now, instead of starting on the first floor, I'm actually going to start on the second floor because I think that the previous lecture with the sketch started on the second floor, and it's a bit easier to start off with here. So we're going to go under the architecture tab, under the build panel. You're going to see the floor command. Okay, and I'm just going to click on floor, not the pull down, just left click on floor. And the first thing you're going to notice is that the ribbon window changed, and we see the big X and the check mark. So that is an automatic tell that we are in sketch mode. Again, if we go to the architecture tab, everything is grayed out. We have to come all the way over here to the right-hand side, and the only way we get out of sketch mode is by hitting either the cancel edit or the finish edit buttons, okay? But we're in sketch mode, which means that we can go ahead and make a couple adjustments, make some changes to the floor before we actually finalize it. Now, similar to all of the other commands that we've been working with, the first stop is going to be right here in the properties box. We click on the pull down, and here there's already some preset floor types. Okay, so we have the concrete on metal deck, we have a concrete slab, we have just these two generic floors, and then we have two wood joists. So 10-inch, one has a ceramic tile as a finish, the other one has a wood finish, and then we have a wood truss joist. Wood truss, in the previous lecture, I talked about different construction types, and the construction type that I was drawing was the platform construction. A wood truss is it's a different type of construction that we're not going to get into, but that's what this option is referring to. Okay. What I'm going to be working on is this wood joist 10-inch wood finish. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. And then right up here in the options bar, I want to make sure that extend into wall to core is selected. Okay. In the previous lecture, I talked about how the face of the floor needs to be aligned to the exterior face of the core, right? So this is saying, hey, do you want me to extend the floor into the wall, into the actual core, which we do. Okay. Now up here, these are our draw tools. What we're about to do is do the whole magenta line, the same thing as the wall profile, where we have to create that profile with that magenta line. And then once we have that, we'll hit the check mark. We could do that by using the line tool, but we could also use that by using this command here that says pick walls. Okay. So as I move, instead of having to draw the magenta line and actually zoom in and find the core and do all that stuff, I can just click on pick walls. And now when I hover over it with my cursor, the entire wall gets selected. Okay. Now the other thing, and this is it's kind of difficult to see. Actually, let's see if we could look at it here. You have to look really closely. Look over here on this side. Notice that we get that dashed line. And if you pay really close attention, you'll notice that that dashed line is on the core face. But if I move my cursor to the other side, that dashed line kind of changes. We could actually see it over here on this side. So the wall is still selected, okay? So we're not doing anything to the selection of the wall, but what is changing is that dashed line. And what that dashed line is representing is the perimeter joist, or that finish side, the finish face of the floor. Right now, Revit doesn't recognize, when we're creating floors, Revit doesn't recognize this as one enclosed space. It doesn't know that this is interior. It does, but for some reason this floor command doesn't pick it up. So we need to tell Revit, hey, this is the interior of the floor, this is the exterior, and And so we want the floor, we want the perimeter of the floor to be on the exterior side. So we have to be really careful that when we click, we have to make sure that that dashed line is on the exterior side of the face of the core. And so that's going to tell Revit that it's on that's the face of the floor. Now, with the pick walls, I can actually click and pick every single wall. But I also have this other really cool trick where we just hover over it, make sure the cursor is on the correct side right now. Almost, if you're too far away, you might accidentally click the wrong side. So zoom in, and then you're going to hit the Tab key on the keyboard. Okay, T-A-B, Tab. It's typically on the top left side of your keyboard. And by doing that, you'll notice that it now selected all of the walls that were connected to one another. Okay, so all of the walls that are connected to one another. And now I will simply just click, and there we go. We have the magenta draw lines already drawn out for us. Now, again, we can do this manually if we wanted to, and we'll end up doing that in a bit too. So now that everything is selected, okay, we're done. We'll just hit the check mark. Now it's going to ask, would you like walls that go up to this floor or topo solids level to attach to its bottom? Okay. What this is saying is right now we don't have any interior walls, okay, on the first floor. But if we did, do we want those walls below us on the bottom side to attach to this floor? Which we would say yes. Now it's asking, the floor roof topo solid overlaps the highlighted walls. Would you like to join geometry and cut the overlapping volume out of the walls? What this is saying is, hey, your floor is overlapping, the geometry of the floor is overlapping with the geometry of the wall. Do you want them to join, or do you want to just leave them overlapping? And it's asking us, would you like to join? We're going to hit yes. And that's it. There is our floor. Let's go ahead and do a section through it so we can take a look at what this looks like. Now, to create a section, to cut a section, we come up here. Hopefully my zoom tools don't get in the way. But we're going to go to the icon right there. There we go. And that says section. So I'm just going to click on that. And this is a click to start, click to finish. So we're going to click once, move the cursor over, and click to finish. Now, if we wanted to flip the section, we can hit the flip grips right over here. Okay. But right now, I'll just leave it as is. What we'll notice is on the left-hand side in the project browser, if we scroll down, we now have a tab that says sections, which we didn't have before. So I'll go ahead and hit the plus sign. I can double click here. I usually prefer to just double click right there. Now, before we jump onto it, sections are great, is a great tool when you're modeling. Obviously, the finished product, the construction drawings that we're going to be doing is going to have sections, but I almost will kind of by standard start off and just model 2 sections because I can always grab them and just kind of move them to wherever I need to. So if I'm working over here in this section, I can just, or in this area, I could take that section and move it. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit wider. If I'm working down here, I'll go ahead and just take this and move it. And now I could take a look at what's going on over here. So let's go ahead and just do that. Let's double click on the section head. And it takes us to our section. Now it's not as pretty just yet. We have to add the colors, we have to add the details. So that's all down here at the bottom left. So I'm going to click down here. We want the detail level set to fine. And now that gives us all of our line work. And let's add some color. And there we have it. Okay. So if we look closely, we have our core, right? This is where the joists would be. We have the subfloor, and then we have the top finished floor. Okay, and we have that connected to our structure, and it's joined right here. Okay. So in a nutshell, that's floors. Well, let's get a little bit more complicated. We started on the second floor. Let's go to the first floor. What if we have this indentation? So let's go through those steps again. We'll go to floor, wood joist 10-inch, extended to wall core. We have pick walls. Okay. So I mentioned that we could hit the tab key, and that's going to select all of them. But look at what's being selected. Look at how it missed these two. And it missed these two because when you hit the tab key, it selects the wall where your cursor is, and then all of the walls that are connected to it in a singular kind of line, right? Kind of like that sketch mode when we see that magenta line. These are kind of secondary, so it doesn't pick these. So we could do a couple different things. I can go ahead and just click. Now, again, remember, we have to make sure you zoom in correctly. Do not try to like select the wall this far out because it's very easy. And we have to make sure that we're clicking on the core face, on the exterior core face. And it's too difficult to tell, and you open yourself up to making mistakes. So let's just zoom in, make sure that we click on the exterior side and the exterior side there. Notice how by clicking the wall, it'll automatically select that entire wall. So before I hovered over and I just hit the tab key, this time I'll just go ahead and click. So I'm going to go out, zooming in. Now I am paying attention to see where that dashed line is. There we have it. Okay. Now we have a problem here, right? Because what are one of the three rules, or what are the three rules when you're in sketch mode with the boundary lines? You can't have any intersecting lines, which is what would be happening here. You can't have any overlapping lines, and you can't have any, and all lines have to be continuous. The lines have to be a continuous set of lines. Okay, so in other words, it has to be one continuous set. And here, we're breaking those rules. Okay, so what we really need to do is we'll use our trim extent tool and click on this magenta line and click on that one. And that's going to trim, and it's going to extend and join those two. I'm going to do the same thing over here and right there. I'll hit the escape key once just to get out of that command. And now we have one set of lines that is continuous. I'll hit the check mark. And there we have it. Okay. Well, what happens if we want to create an opening? So let's go back to the second floor. I'm going to select the floor and I'm going to delete it. Let's say, and I know this isn't the case for the project, but let's say the second floor is really only, maybe kind of this rectangular shape over here, and then this bottom half is just open to below. So it's kind of like a mezzanine second floor type space. So let's go to the floor. Wood joist, extend into wall core, pick walls. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this wall, pick on this wall. I'll go ahead and pick this wall, but I'm not going to pick these. Okay. Again, always make sure that your magenta line is on the correct side of the wall. It's always on the exterior side. Now what I'm going to do is use my draw tool. And maybe what I'll do is put another line just like that. Okay. I'll hit the escape key twice to get out. And this line, let's change this. Let's move this temporary dimension over here. And I don't know, let's say 15 feet. So the floor is going to be 15 feet away. It's going to stop 15 feet away from this wall. Well, I need to join. Remember, I need to join have one continuous set of lines. So I'll use the trim extents, TR, and I'll click on this portion of the line and that portion of the line, and this portion of the line and that portion of the line. And that's it. I could hit the check mark. We'll hit attach and we'll say yes. And now I have a portion of the floor that is kind of hovering. So if we go to the 3D, where is it? There we go. Here, let's add some color here. By the way, in case you've forgotten, the way you orbit in the 3D view is by holding down the Shift key on the keyboard, and then it's you hold on the right button of the mouse, and then you move the mouse around, right? And so there's our floor. Okay, you could see that it doesn't extend all the way to the other side of the other side of the building. Well, if we can let's go back to the second floor. We could always select the wall or the floor and hit Edit Boundary if we want to go in and re-edit the work. If we could make a profile, or if creating a floor is done by creating a profile, well, then we can really make any shape and any profile we want, right? So if I wanted to, I can, I don't know, make a rectangle. Okay, and maybe in the rectangle, I can angle this down, and I use the trim extents, and I hit the check mark. Chemicals, and we'll just go ahead and unjoin those for right now. We go to 3D view. That error was because just my luck, I happened to draw the rectangle right where these two walls were intersecting. Okay. So that's what's happening, right? So we can go ahead and do that. Well, let's say I'm hitting Control Z. Let's go back to the second floor. I'm hitting Control Z to undo. Attach. What about staircases, right? We're going to have to do a set of staircases. Let's say we end up wanting to do a kind of L-shaped staircase. Typically, staircases exist along the existing walls. So I would go ahead and take this. I would edit the boundary. I would use my line tool. And as you're hopefully starting to understand or see, is that my method, everyone's method is different, but my method of working is to kind of draw the shape I want, and then to go in and edit the temporary dimensions, right? I find that to be faster. And so let's say we wanted this, and I'm just making these numbers up at this point. Let's say it's 13 feet. Now this number it has to be a minimum of 3 feet from the drywall. I'm not sure, yep, let's go and put that. It has to be a minimum of 3 feet. I have it at 4 feet. Let's just move it to 3 feet. This one will also be set to 3 feet from the drywall. So let's take that to 3. And let's say this is, let's just do another 13 feet. Okay. So now I have my opening, but we have a problem, right? We have these intersecting lines, and it's not one continuous profile. So I'll use my trim extents, TR, and I'll click there, and I'll click there. I'll click there, and I'll click there. And there we have it. Now we have one continuous line. And I would hit the check mark. Again, we'll hit attach. Excuse me. And now I have an opening in my floor ready for my staircase. Okay. Now, I typically actually won't do the opening for the staircase at this point. I'll build the staircase first. Once I have the staircase in place, then I can really actually just trace that boundary line around my staircase. So I'll be able to come back, edit my staircase And I'm sorry, come back, edit my floor, and then just use the staircase that I have in there, and I'll just trace over it with the boundary lines. So there's that as that option as well. So if we wanted to take a look at what that looks like in the section view, we can double click, and there's that opening. Okay. Now there's one other thing I want to cover, and it actually has to do with the walls, but it's in relationship to the floor. So let's take a look at this section. The second floor looks great. The way that the floor and the wall are joined together. But if we come down here, they're kind of two separate things, and they kind of have to be the way we constructed them, right? When we constructed the walls, we said start from level 1 and go up to level 2. But when we added the floor, remember that the floor, when we add floors, they're added by the finished floor, the top layer, and then the floor goes down. So we have the two starting points of the wall and the floor set to level 1, but one of the objects starts above it, the other object starts below it. And we now have to kind of attach this. And the biggest problem, is that our exterior material is not covering our floor joists. So if it rains, and when it rains, water is going to get right in through there. So what we want to do is take the wall portion, take the exterior portion of the wall, and bring that down. If we bring the floor, the entire wall down, right? Well, now we actually, if I click it, that also brings in the drywall, and it also brings in the core, the studs, which isn't the way that this would be constructed. So we can't just bring the entire wall down. We have to be able to just bring these two elements down. And the way we do that is by selecting it and editing it. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to click on Edit Type. Okay. And then I'm going to go into the structure, kind of cover the structure in previous lectures. I'm going to click on this button down here in the bottom left that says Preview, and it's going to give me a preview of my wall, but it gives me the preview of the wall in a floor plan. So what does this wall look like in a floor plan? I'm going to click on floor plan and say, no, I want to see what this wall looks like in section. And I'm going to zoom on down all the way at the base, at the bottom here of my wall. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to add or edit any of the actual kind of thicknesses of the materials. If I was, then that would happen over here. What I'm trying to do is just kind of modify the structure. So I'm going to click on Modify. And what happens, I can't really see if you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit more. When I move my cursor over the lines, it allows me, it actually highlights each of the base lines. It's really kind of hard to see because the highlight is a bit faint. But if I move my cursor where the sheathing, the plywood sheathing is, I click on it, I get the lock pad. So I'm going to click on the lock pad, and that's going to unlock it. Do the same thing over here. I'll click once, and then I hit the lock pad. So because I want to unlock both of these exterior materials. Once I'm done, I'll just hit OK. I don't need the preview anymore. I'll hit Apply, and I'll hit OK. Now watch what happens when the wall is selected. I now get this triangle pull down. So I could click and drag this down. Actually, it's not, it usually snaps, but it's probably because I'm in a section. Oh, there we go. It just snapped right there. That I'm in a section that it didn't snap. But that's what happens. Right. So now the wall stops up here. The actual kind of structure of the wall stops above the floor, but we're able to pull down the exterior material down past the floor. It actually didn't, did it? No. You see that? You see how we zoom in? These two are not aligned. That's dangerous. I don't mean it's not dangerous, but that can cause a lot of headaches in the future. So let's just bring this back up because I actually don't like bringing, take that back. We can use the align tool, AL, and I can click here and click there, and that'll work. But I actually prefer to just make the changes in the elevation view. So we could do that by going to our elevations, click on the wall, and just click and drag. And on the elevation, it will snap. But it does require us to kind of go back and forth. Okay, make sure that you get both walls, that wall and this wall. Okay, now we have this little punch out here, but that's because this wall on this side isn't pulled down. So that's this wall right there. So when I pull this down, that'll pull it down, and that'll pull that down. So when we go back, right, we no longer have that. But then we kind of run into another problem. So let's go back to the first floor. I'm going to cut another section. I just want to make sure. Let's go ahead and flip this. I want to take a look at what's going on over here. Okay, because what happens is that when we move, let's just double click. Oh, it's a new section, so we have to go back and change the settings again. Set it to fine, shaded. We'll zoom in here. Okay, so that's good. When we make a change to the wall, it also made a change up here, right? Because this too is connected. This is all one continuous wall. So if I was to take this and just move this over here, right? So again, you could move the sections in floor plan, but you could also move them in an elevation, and it just changes that. So it's still section 2. Where was I? If I come back over here, I go to section 2, and it changes. So that's kind of one of the nice things about Revit. Go to section 2. Okay. This is a little confusing if we're not sure what we are looking at. So let's go back. Let's get a better understanding of what it is we're looking at. We just cut a section, and the section is coming in from here. Okay. Now, another nice thing about this 3D view is that in the properties box on the left-hand side, we could come down and click on section box. Okay. We could hit apply. And when we do that, we get this white box here. I could click on the box, and this box has these pull arrows. So I could click, and I could also move this just like that. And it cuts a section in the 3D model, right? So if I'm still not understanding what the section or what's going on in the section, I could come in the 3D view, do the section box, and just kind of roughly guess where my section is being cut from. And now I could take a look and be like, oh, that's what's going on, right? This wall is coming straight down. This wall that I see is connected as part of this kind of vertical wall that has that inset. This is that portion right there is the pull down portion, right? Because we pulled that wall down, that bottom part, that's a pull down portion there. Okay. Now, again, don't make any changes in the 3D view. We do not work in the 3D view, but this is really helpful so that when I come to section 2, I know what I'm looking at this point. Okay. So now that I know that, let's take a look at section 1. Let's go back to the first floor. Let's move section 1 over here. Let's take a look at section 1. And so it's very similar. For some reason, section 2 didn't have this pull down. I'm not quite sure why. But the problem that we have here is that the wall is connected to the floor the way it should be. But now we have a portion of the wall that shouldn't be there, right? And we can't really edit that. We can't edit that because we created this opening using that edit profile. So what we need to do is go back to this wall and edit the profile and adjust it around the floor. So I'm going to go to my west elevation, which is this elevation right there. Okay. Oh, it's asking me to save, so let's just hit save. Let's again, detail level define, shaded view. There we go. So when we select it, we could kind of see it too, right? There's the floor. That gray is where the floor is, and my wall is far below that. Now this pull down doesn't pull down the wall. This pull down is just the pull down for that exterior material that we edited, right? If I move one of these up, you'll notice that they all move up, right? So because they're all connected, they're all part of the same wall. What we need to do is edit the actual height of this. And if you remember how we created the height, it was through the edit profile. So I'm going to click edit profile. And I'm just going to take this and move it just like that. And that was actually just a quick click and drag. Click and drag it up, right? And then once I'm done, and I do it up to the top of the floor, right? That's where the walls start. The walls start at the top of the floor. So I'll hit the check mark. And you'll notice, let's go to that section. That's resolved there, right? Just notice that it's fixed in that area. I'm not sure. Let's take a look at that other elevation. That was my north elevation. Let's go ahead and select this. Let's edit the profile. And we're going to bring this up and then hit the check mark. I find this to be odd. Let's take a look at this in section. Yeah, you see it didn't come, it's not pulled down. So if we pull that down, does it mess up everything else? Cannot extend layers of highlighted vertically compound wall. Let's hit expand. Cannot extend layers of the highlighted vertically compound wall. I'm not quite sure why. Let's hit cancel. Let's take a look here. Hold on. I think what maybe happened. I think what maybe happened has to do with an issue with the when we created the floor, right? We got those two error signs or those two kind of questions at the very beginning, or when we hit to create the floor, and they talked about adding the walls from below to join the floors, and then do you want the floors to be joined together with the wall components, right? And we hit yes and yes, which is what we should do. But tick, but occasionally what ends up happening is that Revit has to do a lot of thinking. Obviously, what it's done and what we can do is amazing and it's great, but there's a lot on the back end and there's a lot that Revit makes kind of assumptions for. And what we're learning, what we're learning is that when it comes to kind of customizing some of this stuff, like customizing the exterior material, but not the entire wall. When we get into customizing with Revit, that's when a lot of the logic, the kind of default logic in Revit begins to kind of break down. And so it's not a big problem. We just have to kind of find workarounds around it. So let's try this. Let's go ahead and bring everything back to the way it was. So I'm going to bring this wall up just like that. Okay. I'm going to move this section. Let's move this section back. Let's try to bring this. I'm going to use the align tool. So align it there. And okay, so if you ever run into the problem, and we'll probably have to do this again, if you ever run into the problem where when you hover over, because you have multiple objects, in this case, we have this line on top of the other wall, we could always hit the tab key on the keyboard, T-A-B, and that's going to toggle between all the things that you can select. Okay, so finally I'm going to get to that line, so I'll click there. What happened? A line there, hit the tab key there. Yep, we get the same error. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is we'll select this and let's just bring the entire wall down, and we're going to have to, which is what I told you we shouldn't do, but we're going to have to join the two manually. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is hit the join button. So essentially when we create that floor and we get prompted those questions, do you want to join the wall with the floor? Do you want to join the two? Okay, what Revit is trying to do is help us from avoiding or helping us in having to do this thing manually. Okay, but what we are going to do is do it manually, and we do that by just hitting the join command right up here. Okay, I'm in the modify panel, join, and I'm going to click on this wall, and then I'm going to click on the floor. There we go. So now it actually joined these two geometries, which is what I want, and that's exactly what I want it to look like. So that worked there. Let's go back to the north elevation. Let's move our section. Didn't seem to work over here. So let's take a look. Let's see, if I use the align, can I pull this thing down now? No. So we're gonna have to do kind of the same thing, but this opening was created differently. So let's go to north, and we're gonna hit edit profile. I'm gonna take this and let's hit align. I wanna align it to there and there. Hit the escape key to get out. I'll hit the check mark. That seems to have done it. Let's go to the section, and there we go. That's what we have. Okay. Whew. In these lectures, I like to show the errors. I like to show that these mistakes happen, and it's really because they're always going to happen. There's no quick and easy way in when we construct buildings. Everything is custom, and every project has its own challenges, not, within the software. So it's not enough to just say click here, click here, click here. The whole point of all of these lectures is to get you to think with the software, because when we're customizing things, it's not going to go the way you always want it to go. So we have to learn, kind of how to speak with the software. What is the software kind of thinking, and how to manipulate and how to get around some of those barriers and some of those challenges. That's just how softwares work. And it's not just Revit, although Revit has some every software has a level of kind of clunkiness. Revit, because it's such an intelligent software, sometimes, and it has so many tools and commands, it sometimes is a little clunky when it gets to some of these customizing things. So that's not a problem. We just have to find and think about the workaround. Okay. But so we figured that out. I believe the other section was correct, right? Yep, we're good there. So everything at this point looks good, and it's what we want. Let's go ahead and I'm going to turn the section box off, hit apply, and there we have it. That's what it should look like. And that's how we create floors. All right, everyone.